everyone, welcome to this session. Today I'm going to be speaking to Ryan Brooks. I worked with Ryan at BAE Systems. Now, Ryan was a graduate when he joined us, but he had taken a different path, and we're going to hear a bit more about that now. So over to you, Ryan. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about your first career, so what you studied, why and where you studied it, and a bit about your first career, and then we'll go on from there.
Of course. So back in 2008, I left high school and decided that I was going to go to somewhere called the Camborne School of Mines in Exeter to study mining engineering. I did a year of that, and actually I realised that I wasn't really suited for manual labour. So I decided to transfer across the country to the University of East Anglia to study environmental earth sciences. So it was something I was always interested in. I was lucky in that my now wife was studying at the university, so it was lucky for me that I could also move across to be with her. So I went directly into my second year at UEA and finished up my bachelor's there. And at the end of my university career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And actually, I think a lot of people now are going, you know what, if I don't know what I want to do, I'll take a year out, to kind of maybe think about it some more. And what I fell into was becoming a teaching assistant. So I was a teaching assistant working with special needs kids in a lovely local secondary school in Norfolk. And I thought, you know what, this is something I really wanted to do. So I decided to train to be a teacher. So I became a teacher in 2000, and I think it was 2012. I started to train to be a teacher, and then 2013 I joined a lovely school in Norfolk as a chemistry teacher. I did that for a few years. Had a few promotions. I was a deputy house leader, which is a pastoral care in a school, and then I became a head of chemistry. And actually, after 3 or 4 years of that, I thought, I love this. I really enjoy it, but I'm quite an impatient person, and actually I get bored quite easily. And so I thought, what do I truly love in life? And actually computers and technology was something that I wanted to do. So I was lucky in that BAE Systems, which is where I first met Charlotte. I started to work and they took me through a lovely grad program and I got to learn lots of technical skills. And basically that's led to where I am today.
Great. And when you did your teaching degree, was it like a conversion degree or something that you did to get into to do something different?
So when you do your usual graduate degree, your BSc in my case, you apply, and there's a few different routes into teaching. So you can do a PGCE. At the time, there was something called SCIT and GTP. So basically a salaried route, a non-salaried route, the typical university route. And I basically did a kind of a blend of the two. So I worked with a university, but I also worked within 2 different schools in the time. So it wasn't necessarily a conversion, but at the end you get your PGCE qualification with some master's credits alongside that. So that's kind of, that's one of the 3 possible routes into teaching.
Okay, thank you. And in regards to you're in tech, you said it's because you're impatient and obviously tech is always changing, but what other things are exciting about technology, or what is it that keeps you interested?
Oh, the fact that you just continually learn new stuff. I mean, I've now worked with hundreds of people in the tech sector, and I don't think any of them have ever said, every day's the same. It's always different. You're always writing a new piece of code. The technologies, the packages that you're using are always different. The opportunity to teach other people things, but also if you choose to become a real expert. And I think that's just something that tech offers everyone. And by learning 1 or 2 skills in terms of coding, it opens up a very wide career path in that you can work in defense, you can work in banks, you can work in retail, you can do absolutely anything. So it's a skill that opens up so many doors.
And if someone is learning to do coding, is there anything you would tell them to specifically learn or learn as much as they can? Have you got any advice within like the learning to program side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so if you're interested in coding, one thing I would say is pick one thing and get okay at it, rather than learning a thin slice of everything. So a lot of people tend to go onto Code Academy and things like that and complete the very basic JavaScript courses, the Java ones, and that's really good to find out something you're interested in. However, what I would encourage you to do is to pick one and actually get yourself a Git account, which is like a code storage utility, I suppose you could call it, online, and start writing some apps. So the first thing I wrote was just a basic calculator. You input two numbers, on a little screen, and it gives you a number out at the end of it. And actually, that's something that's really good when you come to applying for jobs. You can show people that, I'm junior, I'm learning, but this is what I've done in my own time, and you can see the evidence of my code. That's something now that you'll find on a lot of job applications. Just at the bottom, it will ask for your Git account details. It's basically to prove that, are you really interested in this? Like, have you been proving that you're doing this over a couple of years, or are you just saying it because you want a well-paying job?
Good advice. That's really good advice. Thank you. And what about if you were to give any students advice now? I mean, the market is difficult. What advice would you give when someone's job searching or when they're going for interviews? Is there any tips that you might give them?
I think at the end of the day is to be honest about your abilities. So when you're applying for a job, particularly at a tech company, they are not expecting a full package. There is a reason why most companies will have that kind of graduate level of employment, and that is an opportunity for you to learn. So you will usually be put into a team where you can work with a senior engineer or a senior business analyst, whatever route you choose to take. So be open about that. When I initially interviewed for BAE, I can still remember that interview. The question was, can you tell me what you know about Java? And my answer was, I know absolutely nothing about Java. And I still got the job because I said, look, all right, I've read a couple of Wikipedia pages. I should point out that I wasn't just woefully unprepared for that interview. It was a question, I was applying for something a little bit different at the time, but they'd asked me about that. And honesty will get you everywhere. Obviously, if you're applying purely for a software engineering role, I would encourage you to, be able to answer the basic questions. So when you're a junior developer in something like Java, you're going to get asked about the the principles, the OOP principles. So basically, be prepared, but be open with your abilities, and I think that's really important.
Great. And what about once you're in a company, and obviously you want to progress your career? Is there any hints and tips you can give for how to do that?
So actually, one of the hardest things I found, but it's always the best piece of advice, is to meet people. You're in particularly sometimes large organizations, and you can tend to be put into a really small team. Get out there, go to those, the lunchtime brown bag sessions, the pizza and chips after work, just to network people. It's really nice to then get your face out there. Also, when jobs come up, people recognize you and know who you are. I'll give you an example of that. So during this whole COVID thing, I'm also part-time delivering pizzas for Domino's. And the other day I delivered to my first project manager at BAE Systems. And at the time I said, you know what, I'm furloughed at the moment. I need a job. And I got offered one there on the spot.
Oh, brilliant.
Which was amazing. I admittedly, because I'm now back into my current role, I haven't taken that, but it's one of those things that it's nice to get your face out there. So take time to meet people and use the time to learn things. Ask those what you might think are stupid questions. Make sure you ask them, because you've got a great opportunity when you're a graduate to. People don't read this in a negative way. People aren't expecting you to be amazing. They're expecting you to learn. And it's that mindset that's really important, rather than you having these tip-top skills. Your team are there to give you those.
And what about from your journey, from doing your first degree and then, your career journey? Is there any advice that you'd give, or anything perhaps you would do differently, or you might think about things in a different way about the way you did things?
Yeah, I think the one thing I wish I could tell myself 5 years ago was that everything you've done has a transferable skill, whether or not you might think it. So I went from teaching to writing code. You think there's nothing there, but actually what I've now transitioned to is a role called a Scrum Master. And that's basically dealing with people and making teams more efficient. And actually that motivation of students, sometimes I think I'd rather work with students than some of the adults. However, working with those people, that communication is such a transferable skill and so important. And just because you might not have the same background and the same path as everyone else, diversity is always a good thing. And actually, it's not just diversity of people, it's diversity of thought and things like that. So yeah, don't undersell yourself just because you might not have what everyone's expecting.
Right. And I think because partly of your background and your personality as well, you've been really good, certainly where for me with developing the grads that came in. So that's another opportunity for you to get involved and stretch your skills. And so good advice to get involved in that kind of thing as well. Get involved in as much of that sort of thing as you can.
That's another piece of advice, actually. Just because you think something, there's an opportunity that's come up that you maybe haven't been asked about, ask about it. That old adage of you don't get if you don't ask. And actually, I ended up working with Charlotte on quite a few things. I was based in Gloucester, she was in London, and actually I must have been down to 5 or 10 of them when actually, I wasn't really supposed to do that many, but because I asked, I got. And take every opportunity you can get, even if it proves to you that you're not interested in it. So STEM, working with STEM is a really good thing now. Most big companies do science, technology, engineering and maths with local schools. It gives you a chance to get more involved in your company rather than just in your team. And I think that wider view is really important.
Brilliant. And what about your future? What does your future hold for you? And what's exciting for you coming up, and what's exciting for you about the future?
So
A
I'm
bit
now,
of sparkle in lockdown.
so yeah, I mean, well, I hope that I won't be delivering pizzas for too much longer, but now I'm back at my normal role, which is a Scrum Master in a defence contractor based in Gloucester. And one of the things that I'm looking to do, so like I said, I am a Scrum Master, and there's some qualifications that I can do towards that. So there's something called a PSM1, PSM2, and a Professional Scrum Master 3. And a 3 is kind of like the pinnacle of the qualifications that you can get. And I achieved that quite recently. So there's only about 800 of those in the world at the moment. So I'm quite proud of that. And what I'm planning on doing with that is becoming what's called a professional Scrum trainer. So one of the organizations that does all the accreditation is called scrum.org, and they basically hire independent contractors to go out and lead sessions to actually teach the skills and the knowledge that those people have, which I hopefully have myself. So I'm basically halfway through that process at the moment. Whether or not I'm successful in the application, I don't know. But the next step when all of this COVID is over is to go to the US and basically prove my teaching skills. And then hopefully there's a couple more steps I need to do. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm hoping the next 5 years or so go. It's kind of bringing me back to my teaching roots because I loved it, but now I'm just teaching something else. So who knows? That's why I say transferable skills are valued, because you never know what you're going to end up doing.
Absolutely. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Any other last pieces of advice you'd like to give?
Oh, wow. Look, fundamentally, the most important thing is to have confidence in yourself. The situation at the moment isn't fantastic, but it's not going to be that way forever, we all hope. So just because things aren't great now doesn't mean they won't be in the future. So try and keep your chin up, spend the time, if you are out of work, doing things that you probably won't have time to do, when you're maybe a little bit older, things like just getting out, doing nice walks during the working week. For me, spending time with my son and my family. So don't necessarily view things always as the negative. Try to see the positive in things. And hopefully it all will work out for you in the end.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's really, really interesting and insightful and helpful, I hope. So thank you ever so much for doing that.
You're very welcome.